Okay, we've just gone to the lunch break at the Undercover Policing Inquiry, day 3 of Tranche 3, Phase 1. And we've just heard two sets of opening statements. First from James Wood KC. He was representing the family of Michael Tashi Menson, who was killed by police, and the Justice for Michael Tashi Menson Justice Campaign, who were targeted. Also the Tish Reel and Sukhdev Reel, the sister and mother of Ricky Reel, who was killed in a racist attack in the subsequent Justice Campaign, as well as members of Movement for Justice. As is always the case with these horrific, brutal murders, the detail of what actually happened to the family members being recounted is, just so horrific. The family want to know why. Once again, it's a lot about HN81, the undercover officer who has managed to avoid being called by the inquiry. Once again, just showing how, what a dereliction of duty that the inquiry has done by allowing him to get away. His targeting of the Menson family was, these campaigns, they weren't mobilising on the street a great deal. Though there were some protests. For the most part, they were engaging with the press and calling for, trying to pressurise the police to investigate and do their jobs. Entirely peaceful, lawful campaigns. Largely concerned with lawful matters. Nothing to do with public order, certainly nothing to do with subversion. And the same for the Ricky Reels campaign. And them being subject to personal intrusive surveillance of them and their family members, just horrific. How Dave Hagan, HN81, has managed to avoid being called is beyond me. It's supposedly over an issue of health, but there's a lot to suggest that it's just he doesn't want to face any sort of criticism, really. He's going to be criticised a great deal, but he doesn't want to do it in person. It's very much the belief of the bereaved families that the deployment of undercover officers in their lives was a response to the systemic failings of the Met Police and the racism that underlined that failing. We've heard a lot about racism over today and yesterday, but this is, it really is made flesh. The way in which the dismissive nature of the Met Police in just refusing to investigate what are blatantly murders, simply because the people involved were black and they just had felt no responsibility to them. Really, really horrific, really disturbing. The fact that there was that the police denied there was any spying took place, and when it was admitted that them just not paying any sort of any lip service to it. James Wood says his clients have accepted they're likely to never find out the full surveillance that was put upon them, but they're hoping that by working with the inquiry that there's that future families don't have to endure this sort of dehumanising, disgusting sort of practice of being spied upon. We then had James Scobie KC, who was representing Youth Against Racism in Europe and militant Labour, specifically Dave Nellist, Lois Austin, Hannah Sell, Lewis, and Judy Benson. This was particularly a very direct takedown of Peter Francis, absolutely damning of HN43, the undercover officer who went whistleblower. I think once you've heard this opening statement, then the submissions of Maya Silkad yesterday make a lot more sense. It's a very direct takedown of the way in which Peter Francis operated as an undercover officer. It talks about how he felt extra special for being recruited into the SDS, how he felt it was the jewel in the crown. Everybody was in awe and admiration of the work that the SDS did, that he wanted to be the best, and that meant being in the SDS. It talks about the way in which the SDS exaggerated the risk that undercover officers were under, and they did this on purpose. That in order to be a good undercover officer, you had to show that you were at risk, you were close to public disorder, violence or crime, that you were a deep deployment, that you were the closeness of the relationships that you had, the deeper the deception, the better the deployment. So the emphasis wasn't necessarily on objective value of intelligence that was being reported, but just that the deeper and more risky the deployment was, then the better it was considered. And what is kind of put is that basically that Peter Francis wanted to be the best, so he attempted to be the best. However, the fact of the matter was that if an objective analysis of reporting showed there was nothing of any value for him to report. But this exaggeration of risk was a really key part of how the SDS kind of justified their existence as a unit. It meant that they could explain away their paranoia and security about keeping the units secret, and disguise their real motivations for what they were doing, make their officers look good. It was the justification for the unit itself. Really, was this high level of risk. So Peter Francis claims that he was involved in violence as a member of Youth Against Racism in Europe, but it's wholly unsupported by his reporting, and he's unable to remember any specific examples of it. He's referred to it numerous times, but then pulled back on it. The only examples of bodily harm that he can specifically recall was from police violence against women at Welling. It's pointed out that there's a lot of police reports that are missing that avoid police riots, and the only place that the inquiry has got any of the documents on them has been from the security services, not from the police themselves. I mean, that's kind of typical of the way the police have engaged with the inquiry. But though it's kind of understandable that they would destroy, mislay or withhold materials that paint them in a bad light, it's kind of strange that they would do the same with stuff that would justify the deployment of undercover officers. So I mean, the suggestion being that those ones don't exist. Peter Francis said he was the first undercover officer to infiltrate militant Labour because it was so insular, which is just, I mean, if anybody remembers that militant Labour are now the Socialist Party. I mean, I think the opposite is true. Socialist Party are always very keen to try and recruit people. Very easy organisation to join. It's pointed out that the reason he was the first officer to infiltrate them was because the first one was tasked to. Not because it was any difficult. He reported extensively on sexuality, relationship details, and family lives of activists, as well as the immigration status. This, he says, was used in order to recruit them as informers by blackmailing them. He talked about the acronym MICE, Money, Ideology, Compromise, Ego, which was the special branch, an acronym to describe the process of that. So basically, it's all kind of points, something like a real theme has been the Met Police's institutional defensiveness and culture of protecting its own, that led to its interference with so many campaigns, particularly those that were fighting for justice. It's increased reporting on lawyers and disregarding of legal professional privilege really increases through this period. I think Peter Francis got an absolute kicking from this opening statement. Obviously, Peter Francis's evidence to the inquiry has been instrumental in the inquiry taking place, but there are a great many things that he has said which activists take issue with, quite rightly. The fact of the matter is, exaggerating their role was kind of what the undercover police did, and so Peter Francis wasn't immune from that. To be a good undercover officer meant exaggerating risk, exaggerating the threats that activists were posing to public order and subversion. So we're on lunch break now. We'll be back just after 2 with hearing from Kirsten Heaven, who is representing the coordinating group of non-state, non-police corps participants. So that's the overarching group, which everybody feeds into. That might be quite a long submission, might not be, who knows. But yeah, so we'll be back after. Thanks for joining. Just a quick plug that there is an event on this Sunday in the Mayday Rooms in London. Everything you ever want to know about the inquiry but are afraid to ask. Being run by the Undercover Research Group. If you're in the London area on Sunday, I really recommend coming along. Hopefully it will be a really useful session particularly if you're someone who's affected by the undercover deployments, wants to know more about how the inquiry works, what to expect from the next day's tranche. Yeah, please come along. I'll be there. Lots of other people who are following the inquiry closely will be there. There's also this Friday, the in-person hearings start in the International Dispute Resolution Centre, which is outside St Paul's Cathedral. We'll be having a protest at 9 a.m. Just to mark the beginning of the Tranche 3 in-person hearings. If you're able to make it down, 9 o'clock in St Paul's Churchyard, just literally outside the steps, the really iconic sort of spot. We'll be there with banners. We'll have to be going in. Myself, I'll be going into the inquiry by about 9:30, 10. So it won't be a particularly long protest. If you're able to show your face, even if it's just for a short period, you'd be really welcome. I'll do a live stream, I think, probably from outside from the protest. Hopefully see some of you there. If not, join you back here after lunch. Thanks for joining.